How do you feel about the emergence of Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee?
Better than I felt about Biden, that's for sure. He said he was going to be a one-term president, and then he didn't, which I think was, I don't think you should lie to the American people for most reasons. Obviously, it happened kind of shadily. Like, there was no open primary, but I don't know. I'm okay with it, frankly. I don't. I think of the major Dems on you or the camera.
You can look at me.
Okay. Gretchen Whitmer would have been cool, but I don't know if she had enough executive experience. But I think of all like the top high-level Dems, she was going to be one of them. The fact that it ended up being her, I can deal with that. She's all right.
Gotcha. So how do you feel about the 2024 primary, the original one?
The Democratic one? It was a joke. I mean, he was the incumbent president. Marianne Williamson, I mean, what's she going to do, right? The other guy, Dean Phillips?
Dean Phillips.
I mean, that was just to get his name out there. I don't
Yeah.
ever think, I think that was fundamentally unserious. Man, it was a waste of fundraising money.
What issues matter most to you as a college student?
I'm going to actually go first with national security. Second,
What do you mean by national security?
I think the idea in this country that we should become isolationists, that we should abandon our allies, that we should, let China, let Russia do what they want. I don't like that. Not a big fan of that. I'm at prime drafting age at the moment. I would like to not die in the Pacific the next 20 years, right? And there is this undercurrent of, let's pull out of NATO, let's drop our allies, let's get rid of all of our treaties, let's shrink the size of the military, let's focus on home. When that's not what America's done for a while now. The last time we had that policy was before France fell in the 40s, and there's a reason we don't have that policy anymore. And I don't like the fact that that's increasingly becoming a part of our politics.
Do you think the expansion of NATO provoked Russia into war?
The countries that joined NATO afterwards, after they invaded Ukraine. It's a defensive pact. If you are going to cause war in Europe, do not be surprised when a defensive pact comes up against you. Sure, more people in NATO could provoke Russia, right? But that's that's just basic geostrategic thinking. Like, if I'm surrounded by people who I don't like, of course I'm going to be a bit provoked by it. But just don't invade foreign countries. You don't invade Latvia. NATO doesn't fight back against you, right? Not that hard. It is simply not that hard to invade foreign countries. Finland joining NATO is not a good reason for Russia to start being provoked, because they shouldn't invade Finland in the first place, right?
What do you think is the purpose of a democratic pact like NATO expanding?
It is to show autocrats and authoritarians that history is going in one fundamental direction, which is the spread of Western, maybe not even Western, of liberal democracy, right? I've got my problems with it, just I think as anyone else does. But time after time, we have shown that if you want to increase human happiness, if you want to increase development, if you want to increase rights and freedoms, you cannot run an autocracy. You cannot be authoritarian. And every single authoritarian dictatorship in the history of the world has failed eventually, right? Stalin failed. The USSR failed, eventually liberalized a bit under Yeltsin, obviously went back up during Putin, right? China, Dengist reforms, it's backslid a bit, but all of them eventually fell. That is the direction of history. We have pacts like NATO to say, we are doing what is right. Because I do believe that the moral center of the world is America. It is, just to some extent Europe, it is the Western democracies. We are, if you look at, we're not perfect, but if you look at our record on war crimes, if you look at our record on having slaves, as the Chinese do, especially the Uyghurs, right? We are building a moral block, and we're saying, do not touch us. We got to stick together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in the club of NATO, as it's proliferated, you've kind of had this introduction of many different kinds of democracies, if you will. How do you feel about the rise of Viktor Orban as he is now a member of NATO, sort of like a Trumpian figure in Eastern Europe?
I think Trumpian is an insult to Trump. Viktor Orban is a democratic leader in the loosest sense, right? I do not like that. I think that is less the fault of NATO, more the fault of the EU, the fact that they have not properly regulated him. That's a whole separate can of worms. As much as I dislike Orban, I accept that they're in NATO, and there's not too much we can do about that. Like, it was Turkey, under Erdogan, which is obviously a bit autocratic, tried to hold up was Sweden from joining NATO. At that point, maybe we'd talk about, if you're not going to be a Western democracy, if you're not going to, more importantly, be a country run morally, should we let you in? Should we keep you in? Obviously, Turkey's different because they have, geostrategic interests in the Black Sea and in our power projection in the Middle East. But I don't know. It is a necessary evil. Plus, as I've said, I think Hungary will liberalize eventually. I mean, Orban cannot live forever.
Gotcha. So, as far as foreign policy goes, do you think this current administration has been on a good track?
Afghanistan was a mess. A mess which I believe, I've read a lot of the docs. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, listened to a lot of videos about it, read a lot of news about it, listened the statement that came out from those 50 generals, top level guys at the Pentagon, that said Afghanistan was because of how Trump set that up. That was still a foreign policy disaster, and I'm not a big fan of that. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Ukraine is complicated. I think that was a power grab by Putin to say, I got to find a way to stay in power somehow, especially on the verge of a failing Russian economy at that point. I don't think that's Biden's fault. I think that would have happened under any other administration. I think under a Trump administration, it would have happened. However, I think he's handled it well. NATO's expanded. We are in fewer wars than we were at the beginning of his term. Less troops on the ground in other countries. Most of the money we've sent to Ukraine has been well spent, and that's mostly sending old stuff we'd have to pay to destroy anyways. It's stimulated our economy, created a lot of defense jobs. We're both from Arkansas. Defense is important here. I've got a buddy who got hired at L3Harris because they were able to expand, because they're now making, they're restocking these munitions, right? So it's been good for the economy. Gaza's a disaster, not Biden's fault. If anything, it happened in spite of us, because we told the Israelis it was going to happen and they ignored us, or they didn't listen to us, one of the two. I mean, I'm a bit strong on that one, but I don't know. I think he did better than Trump would have done. Look at foreign policy under Trump, right? Withdrawing from the Paris Peace Accords, disaster. Threatening NATO, disaster. Not great, I actually have family that works in the State Department. I won't name for obvious reasons. And they said that they would go to events and foreign dignitaries and foreign workers would literally say sorry to them that they had to work under Trump, because it was constant chaos. It was constant management of that chaos, and they couldn't be productive because of it.
How do you feel about the Abraham Accords?
I would love to see normalized relations in the Middle East. I think I can give him credit for that, but I don't think that's a policy that's exclusive to Trump. I think that could have happened anyways. Kushner, I mean, really, is that the guy we're going to let manage that? The fail son? I mean, he's got that was silly. That was pure nepotism. I don't think that's exclusive to a Republican administration, let alone Trump. I mean, look at the Camp David Accords, right? But I would like normalization. I think everyone wants peace in the Middle East, but that's not going to happen with Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Would you call the appointment of Kamala Harris nepotism or circumstance?
I would call it more circumstance than nepotism, but also, I mean, if Biden died and Harris became president, would that be nepotism simply because she was the vice president? Like, nepotism is due to an unearned, I appoint my kid, right? Kid's never done anything. Kid's not qualified. She's the vice president. She has that level of experience. And compared to every other high-level Democrat, she has a bit more. She's at least been in the Situation Room, right?
What would you say is her biggest accomplishment going into this election?
Her biggest accomplishment? I mean, I'm going to tie her to the administration on this one. The Infrastructure Act was fantastic. We've seen that money coming into Arkansas. The renewable money that's coming has been fantastic. I think those two big legislative accomplishments were there. I'm gonna give it that. And also the post-COVID recovery. We, as much as if you read the news, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, we're not gonna see a soft landing. We're going to have a recession. The economy's going to be in shambles, and it's not great, but it's much worse. We recovered better than almost every country in the world. Look at Britain right now, right? They had fuel shortages and food shortages and massive inflation. We had some of that, but not to that same extent. So I think the fact that we've actually had a soft landing, and that's, vibe-wise, that may not feel like it, but in the economic data, it is undeniable that we have not really entered a recession. We've had the soft landing that Biden and Harris promised.
Are you going to watch the debate tonight?
Yes.
How do you think that's going to go?
Better than the last one went. I've done speech and debate for 7 years now, so I watch all that very keenly. The expectations for Harris are higher than they are for Trump. She's going to attempt to provoke him. If he gets angry on TV, that hurts his polling data. But we expect so little of him, because he can be raucous, he can insult people on stage, he can violate democratic norms. We don't care, right? At least the American public doesn't care. But Kamala Harris has to present this kind of new face. So I don't know. I think it'll be, if he starts getting angry, if she can get under his skin, she wins. If he stays stoic, I think it's 50-50. Yeah.
Do you think this will be consequential as to who wins the election?
I mean, everyone wants to think so, right? Everyone are like, oh, the American public's going to listen to this debate and it's going to be awesome. I mean, look at polling data. It's tied. It's a toss-up. I would like for it to be, I think. I mean, she's a good debater. I think, even if you look at her performance back at the Democratic primaries in 2020, I mean, she's a former prosecutor. She's really good on stage. And she's better on stage than Biden was, right? Especially given the whole senility thing. And I think that she has what it takes to position herself as stronger than him, which could influence it. It's hard to tell beforehand. I don't know. I'm unsure.
Do you think she'll try to distance herself from the Biden administration tonight?
Oh, I mean, she'd be a fool not to, right? There are plenty of things that are distanceable. Israel policy, right? She's going to distance herself from that one if she can. Yeah.
Gotcha. One last question. So, where do you get your news from? And then how often do you check these sources?
I'm a news junkie. Mainly CNN, but increasingly skeptically. A bit of Fox every now and then to keep me balanced. NPR sometimes. I'm on Twitter a lot, and that's very, very wide range. So I get anything from a tweet from Tim Pool to like some random internet communist.
Any YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, a lot of YouTube. I can pull it up actually.
Oh, for sure.
Let's see here. I'm really liking. Let me find this guy's name. Let me see here.
I can go through some of the kind of the big ones right now that are online.
Yeah.
You have like Breaking Points.
I've heard of them, but not particularly.
The Hill.
Yeah.
TYT.
Well, speaking of TYT, I'm a reluctant Hasanabi watcher. Yeah.
Okay.
Not TYT though.
Gotcha. Anything else?
I'm trying to find the name of this guy. Perun. He's Defense Logistics. I think he's fantastic. I think it's William McDaniel and/or Spaniel. I like him. What is this guy's name? Ryan Macbeth. I like Ryan Macbeth. He's good. I get a lot of it, kind of like my day-to-day stuff from. Oh my God, what's it called? I'm putting the spot here. I was literally just watching one of their things earlier. Let's see here. TLDR News, which is a British outlet. I mean, I'm a big kind of transatlantic wonk. So
any World Graphics?
I've heard of. I think I've watched a couple of their videos, but not so much for news.
Gotcha.
What's Chris Cappy? I can't think of his channel, but I can't even. I mean, yeah.
All right, dude.
Yes.
Thank
you
you very much.
Awesome.